Thanks for joining us. My name is Ibrahim Sani. We continue our march on debating and discussing and unearthing all the issues relating to Belanjawan 2024, the budget 2024, here on Astro AWANI. Today I have with me Renganathan Kannan, the Executive Director of TraTax, the tax advisor here in Kuala Lumpur. Renga, thanks again for taking the time to speak with us. Let's do a quick scan in terms of the overall taxation ideas that we have in the country. Again and again, we've heard that we have a narrow tax base, that we need to tax more, that our competitors have a lower tax regime and we're losing out on that. What's your view on the taxation regime of Malaysia, and where do you think we should go from there?
Right. So yeah, thanks for having me, Ibrahim, and have a good day. So we in Malaysia at the moment, our headline tax is 24%, right? But when we compare with our neighbors, of course Singapore is 17%, but it's always not good to compare with Singapore. There are various reasons, but it's good to compare with Thai and Vietnam, 20% at the moment. Indonesia is 22%, Laos is 20%, Philippines from 30 they brought it down to 25%, and Myanmar is 22%. So at the moment we are in 24%. From the competitive point of view, slightly higher. Of course, there are some pressure from, always there's a ask from chambers and business group to reduce the tax rates. So this time, I think the small percentage cut, probably 0.5 or 1%.
Oh, that's what you think, that the government is going to reduce corporate tax?
Possibilities are there because over the region, in the region we can see rates are becoming very competitive.
The problem that we have perennially is, of course, widening the tax base and increasing tax collection. If the government reduces corporate tax, where does the government intend to increase on the revenue for the government?
Right. They can't reduce the tax substantially, probably 0.5 or 1%. That's a range that we're looking at, because the last amendment actually happened since 2016. Our tax rate is 24%.
No, my question is, if the government intends to reduce the taxation on corporate tax by 0.5%, where does the government intend to increase the collection?
Probably by widening the scope of service taxes and also improvising on scrutinization of the present tax base that we have. And revenue is looking at expanding the taxpayers' base,
So, in your opinion, the government might reduce corporate tax and increase taxation on individuals?
The tax base.
Tax
base. Yep.
How?
See, we'll go back to SVDP, just SVDP 2.0. Intention is to bring back a lot of people from the black economy, shadow economy into the system. Okay, and going back to parliamentarians' debate at Parliament, the purpose of CGT and introduction of GST and all these things is to bring back people to the system. So by having a wider base in the system, logically we should have a greater collection of tax.
So you're talking about the Special Voluntary Disclosure Program 2.0, which runs from the 6th of June this year until 31st of May next year. Do you have any data points when it comes to people taking up the Special Voluntary Disclosure Program?
Those details are not available.
Yeah.
But SVDP says 2.0, but for your information, this SVDP is actually, I think, 4th or 5th time happened past 6 years.
Yeah, and of course, every time there is a voluntary program on disclosure, take-up is actually quite, historically at least, has been well done. But in your opinion, do you feel that it's right for the government to reduce corporate tax?
In order to be competitive, I think it is okay to reduce at least 0.5 or 1%. Should be. Because the region, looking at the region, Indonesia is 22% now, and Myanmar, fine, they just reduced it. Philippines from 30 to 25%, big jump.
Sorry, say again?
From 30% to 25%.
Oh, Philippines has reduced it quite substantially.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about the e-invoicing right now. The government is doing that in the process, trying to capture every single transaction, business transactions out there. Let's talk a little bit more about e-invoicing.
Yep. See, e-invoicing, at the moment, our tax collection is across 160B. Okay, that's a target. So with the with e-invoicing, of course, it will be effective from June 2024 for 100 millions and above. Then 50 million and above will be 1st Jan 2025. 25 million and above will be 2026. And 2027 is for everyone. So moral of story is by 2027, everyone will be in the e-invoicing system platform.
Of course, this is seen elsewhere around the country, around the region as well.
Yes. So by be in the system, it will be a real-time data for revenue authority. Okay. So basically, revenue can see and revenue can view what businesses are doing on a real-time basis. So with that, allow me to read. CEO's present statement is to streamline and enhance the country's tax system and promote transparency and give a more accurate compliance risk assessment. In addition to that, this initiative serves as a platform for both tax administration and taxpayers to collaborate in an open and honest manner to enhance IRBM's corporate tax compliance affairs. So, moral of the story here is business of revenue will be a complete change from where they are now in future. It will be real time, and we won't be seeing audit after 3 years or 5 years. It can be a real time audit.
When is it going to be executed?
From 2024 June.
2024
for 100 million above.
So
50
for
million
businesses
is
with
2025.
So it's not basically SMEs.
Yeah, 2027 for everyone.
Okay. And do you agree with such a measure?
Yes. So as we started earlier, shadow economy is, they are not in the system. So if everyone in the system, it's good for the country.
Moving on to capital gains tax, that has been quite the conversation. We've seen how the economy minister gave an interview with The Edge over the weekend, talking at length about CGT. What's your view on this?
See, CGT in Malaysia, of course, is taxable for only real properties, which is introduced in 76. So in 1988, there's an inclusion, there's an amendment actually happened for real property company shares. Okay, that has been introduced. Para 34A has been introduced for anti-avoidance measurement, basically to control and for should not move the shares for tax avoidance purposes. So now, the last budget in February, PMX announced that it is not applicable for listed shares. Okay, so going back to control company and shares, not listed companies, unlisted companies. But due to EU's pressure, Singapore and Hong Kong actually proposed to impose CGT on gains arising from disposal of wide-ranging foreign assets effective YA 2024. So we don't know whether Malaysia will follow the footsteps or how tightly it will be controlled.
Renga, let's talk a little bit more about the budget wish list. Where do you think the conversation will be when it comes to you wanting to see more from the budget?
Okay, what I want to see more from that budget is luxury goods of tax, which is announced by PMX on the last budget, but there's no details yet. And so that will be an impact for tourism industry. Okay, and of course it will only impact a certain segment, T20. Even though we don't agree, generally we don't agree the classification of T20, but it will be only impact certain class of people. But it will be a big impact for people in tourism industry. Okay, and it will be advantage for our neighbors, Thailand and Singapore. So that we need more details. If it is going to be implemented, what rate, mechanism, administration, and of course cost and benefit. Hopefully the compliance cost and administration cost is not higher than the taxes.
So you're looking at, let's say, GST is at 6%. There could be a collection cost that is higher, maybe 2-3%. Is that what you're trying to say?
The chances are there. About, let's say, for example, about 10%. Okay, but this is in addition to GST and SST. It's totally different tax.
Yeah.
Okay, and still it's not consulted yet, and we don't know what type of percentage.
Do you think GST is going to be introduced next year?
Looking at e-invoicing and recent announcements by politicians, I don't think so it will be introduced.
Oh, you don't think so?
I don't think so it will be introduced next year. So, and also looking at e-invoicing, I mean, 2027 we can see it's a full flex. So probably by 2025, 2026, probably, you know, getting prepared, the businesses and people going back to GST or any other probably VAT. Hopefully it don't take a, you know, what happened to GST 1.0, it shouldn't happen in future.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you feel that these are the moving on to VAT, for instance, would be the next best thing right now? But I know, do you feel that the political cost is going to be there as well for the government if they do it?
Political cost, of course, you know, we can see the impact. We have seen that just about 3 years ago, I mean, 2018, how it has been abolished and quickly shifting to SST. So from SST to GST, of course, there is a chance, because this is the even present politicians who actually were against to GST at that point of time. But now we can see that a lot of people are talking about, you know, tax everything all together. Then you go back to targeted subsidy or targeted grant mechanism on according to their income level. Of course, we should welcome that, but we should tax when looking at broadband, broad, wide tax should welcome. But whether it's 6% or lower, I don't think so. It shouldn't be lower than 6%. It should be, you know, at least six, and wider basis. So meanwhile, before we go to GST or VAT, I think what government might do is by expanding the scope and mechanism in the present SST.
All right.
Okay, because the collection, what they collected in the last GST is about 44B. FM2 did mention, Ahmad Maslan did mention that targeted collection, if GST has been introduced, will be about 50B. Okay, so but at the moment, I think we are about 33B collection for SST. So of course there is a gap. So in order to fill the gap meanwhile, I think that Ministry of Finance will take some measurements to.
2023 SST collection is 33 billion. The year before that was 31 billion, and the year before that was 26 billion or 25 billion. We're not looking at this growing any bigger, because when you look at the GST collection, even at 2018, it was 43 billion. Of course, GST refunds is 23 billion, so we're looking at net GST about 20 billion, less than SST. So if you look at GST with GST refunds having less than SST, you start to wonder whether or not it's going to be worthwhile doing GST. And if so, 6% wouldn't cut it. You might have to increase it to, I don't know, 10% maybe, I don't know. So the likelihood of the government having to do this is actually quite rare. But having said that, what do you think the government can do? Because if you look at luxury tax, you look at capital gains tax, inheritance tax, wealth tax, any of these other tax measures, it's not necessarily going to be a big income earner for the government, because nowhere on this planet where you get the T1 or T5 taxation schedule getting more than, say, sales tax or GST or VAT. Do you feel that it's even worthwhile targeting folks that have money and instead try to focus on, say, GST, but do it well? Where do you think this lies, the focus?
Okay, two things. Targeting the top tier is a separate issue than GST, because this is a wider base. Of course, on consumption tax, right? GST is more on consumption tax and wider base. We can view transactions, flows, a lot of things, and of course the intention is to bring down the shadow economy and bring them into the system, inclusive into the system. So administration wise, it will be a very good administration, and of course confident enough that revenue would collect greater amount than whatever that we are collecting at this point of time. But targeting the top tier, that is more on wealth tax and capital tax, which generally income tax does it. Okay, whereas GST is more on customs at this, in Malaysia. So wealth tax, capital tax, that is, it's a kind of periodic review carried out by revenue about every 15-20 years. At this moment, you have this much of wealth. Where's the source? What is the basis? So generally, the top tier, if they don't have proper documentation or unjustifiable, probably transferred from one generation to another generation, and lack of documentation, there's no explanation, there's high chance that revenue will win the game, or they will tax X amount as taxes.
Okay. Other budget wish lists that you want to share?
Yeah, SVDP 2.0 doesn't cover withholding taxes, but it will cover transfer pricing and corporate tax and all these things. So I have two,
Wish lists
in SVDP 2.0 to cover withholding, to have withholding tax in, and plus, see if you taxpayer exercise SVDP on the corporate tax, then revenue can audit under transfer pricing. Or otherwise, if let's say taxpayer exercise SVDP for transfer pricing, revenue can come after for corporate tax. So that has to be fine-tuned by taxpayers. And wish list to the taxpayers, it's good to take advantage of this SVDP 2.0. Why? Because of pandemic. See, during pandemic, big issue is documentation, communication. All of us expected pandemic only for about 2 months, but that was not a reality. We were dealing with about two and a half or 3 years. So it's good to resolve this at this juncture, because generally voluntary disclosure like Canada and US is only once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
But we have this SVDP, temporary voluntary disclosure, for past 6 years, 7 years, already 4 times. So I don't know when it will come to an end, but it's good to take advantage at this point of time. And of course, global minimum tax of 15%. Okay, globally, most of the countries are implementing effective from 2024, but Singapore is, they deferred it to 2025. So it is interesting, highly anticipated to know what is the announcement going to be in this budget, whether we are going to follow 2024 or 2025, and what are the implications, because that is basically companies earning more than 3B in Malaysia. Of course, euro is 750M. They have to pay their fair share of tax, at least 15%.
Yeah, and they can't run away. Any market is going to be
in respective jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And we have to welcome that. That's a
Yeah.
good move. So looking at implementation on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That was Renganathan Kannan, the Executive Director of TraTax. If you want to learn more about some of the developments on budget 2024, do stick around to astroawani.com. You can also find more information like this on our shows, Niaga Awani, as well as my own show, Notepad, with me, Ibrahim Sani. Thanks for continuing on with us. So I just want to do something fun. Let's talk a little bit more about the latest iPhone launches. I've had my first, take or look on the iPhone 15, as well as the iPhone 15 Plus and iPhone 15 Pro Max. The iPhone 15 Plus is actually a good starting or entry point for you guys that want to upgrade from the older iPhones. This is, of course, a great way to enter the Apple ecosystem as well if you are an Android user and want to enter the iPhone space. There's a lot that can be discussed when it comes to the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus, but I want to focus on, the 10 big points. First of all is the brighter Super Retina XDR display, the A16 Bionic chip that comes in with the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus. And just a reminder that the A16 Bionic chip also runs on the older iPhone 14 Pro Max as well. So you're getting the most advanced chip that is in the iPhone 14 that comes in the iPhone 15. So something to think about there. The connectivity is also quite interesting because it is in compliance with the EU regulation to have to have only USB-C ports on the devices by the end of 2024. So Apple is in compliance with that, and of course everything comes into play when it comes to ending the Lightning port for the iPhone devices. I've tried the iPhone 15 Plus, and it does stand up to that challenge of all-day battery life. It doesn't heat up the way iPhone 15 Pro Max does. I'll talk about that later. But more importantly, the problems of all the iOS when it comes to setup and especially heating up does not exist for the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 15 Plus. That's the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus. And I would greatly recommend you to upgrade from whatever you have on the older generation of iPhone to iPhone 15 or 15 Plus. Get the 15 Plus. It's 6.7 inches. Now, let's talk about the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I have been a pro user of the iPhone since the iPhone 10 came out. And every single time that it was launched, I always rely on it for broadcasting capabilities and capacities. And it's very essential for us to talk about the kind of problems and the kind of uptake or the virtues that iPhone 15 Pro Max has. Let's start with the problems. First of all, it heats up. No joke, it does. And because of that, it does hit on the battery life. But Apple has come out 2-3 days ago saying that there will be a bug fix in the iOS 17 releases. So already you see there is a problem when setting up. If you want direct moving from an older iPhone to the new iPhone, normally what people do is that they direct transfer the phone. They don't normally do it over the air using iCloud backup because that would take ages. Direct transfer, depending on how big your size is, can take just a few hours. But you can't do that if you're running on an iOS 17.0.0 or .0.1. So they introduced 17.0.2 to solve that problem. So they solved it. Now they're going to introduce an update on the iOS 17 to address the overtime work on the A17 Bionic chip, to address the heating up specifically during setup and some of the third-party app usage. Hopefully that will resolve the heating up, but when I was using the iPhone 15 Pro Max, it does heat up. Second, of course, is on the throttling up or down, because there are talks on the titanium being a problem, and there might be a need for them to throttle down the A17 Bionic chip, the latest and most advanced chip that Apple has produced. It seems like with the iOS update, there might not necessarily be a need for them to throttle down the A17 Bionic chip. So these are some of the updates that we can talk about when it comes to solving the problem of the iPhone. The titanium itself is not the cause of the heat, nor is the aluminum casing. If you look at the design, it's actually quite beautiful, the most beautiful iPhone I've ever laid my hands on. And the titanium comes in 4 colors, from the black titanium, white titanium, and many more. Generally speaking, the titanium encasing makes it lighter. It is noticeably different, even though they advertise it as 19 grams lighter than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It's actually noticeably lighter, noticeably thinner as well. And noticeably really having a larger, wider estate when it comes to the thin bezels that it has on the screen. So that is something that is quite notable. Also quite notable is when we come to the conversation of what it has when it comes to the iPhone 15. Because moving from 14 to 15, you might not necessarily see the difference, but coming from the older iPhones into iPhone 15 is going to be a straight jump out in terms of the difference. Where is the difference? Let's look at the longest optical zoom ever on an iPhone, because the iPhone 15 Pro Max features 3 times telephoto camera at 77 millimeters, and it goes further with the all-new 5x telephoto lens going in at 120 millimeter focal length. This gives a great close-up shot for you. Also, the state-of-the-art camera does feature tetra prism design. It's innovative. It includes a new 3D sensor shift module for optical image stabilization upon zooming and autofocus. I've tried all this during my shots. You can take a look into all the shots that I took. It does create that great longest optical zoom ever on an iPhone. Fantastic. It does have the most versatile pro camera system. We're looking at 1x. You can go at 24 millimeters, 28 millimeters, and 35 millimeters very quickly. It can also take portrait shots post haste. If you take a photo on a normal shot, you can actually turn it into a portrait mode and have a bokeh shot. You can also have great design when it comes to having all these still photo capacities. On my day-to-day job on doing videos, landscape mode, I've done a 30-minute interview on my iPhone 15 while it heats up like crazy, but it does take a 4K interview extremely well, and it links up to my iCloud. I've published that interview in 4K. It's fantastic. It's called Keluar Sekejap with Tiba, my other podcast. That shot was taken on an iPhone 4K. 4K with an iPhone 15 Pro Max. So you can actually enjoy that kind of content if you create a video content with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Verdict, get it. I think it's the best iPhone ever that has been created. Yes, it heats up, but hopefully with the iOS update can resolve that. Titanium design is fantastic. The long optical zoom is fantastic. The versatile pro camera system is fantastic. So the A17 bionic chip is also helping that kind of assistance. I was transferring it using USB-C 3, and the data transfer is just fantastic. I was transferring, 10 gigabyte in just a few seconds. It was unbelievable because I have a Mac Mini at home. That's my main workflow I use on that, and the transform of the data is just so fast. It's just unbelievable. Those are the updates I can bring to you. Check it out. Enjoy the new iPhones, and hopefully, we can, watch out for the new Apple products coming up soon. Of course, I'm really excited about the Apple Watch Ultra, so do check that out as well. Catch you in the next one.